Policy and Implementation webinar for July 2023. Thank you all again for being here. We're looking forward to sharing some of our updates with you. We do have a large group today, and we've got a couple different people that will be presenting. So I'm excited to have those people introduced, and we'll kind of kick things off. The way we're going to do today is we're going to start with the policy updates, and Jennifer Barshak from DHS will be leading that conversation. We also have Christina Erstad Sankey here with us. She's going to be collaborating with us to talk a little bit about class observations, along with Emily Seibel. So the two of them are going to talk through how that process works. And then between Kateri, Melissa, and myself, we're going to be talking about the implementation changes and some of the forms and changes that you'll see in the form. So we had talked about sending out a summary of changes, but without having really final language that we wanted to use to be really official, we thought we would hold off on presenting you with a summary of changes. And we're going to present what we have for changes today, and then we'll send you a final copy. We just didn't want multiple copies with different language out there. So we made a decision today to just hold off on that summary, and we'll get that out to you within the next 2 weeks or so. We just have a couple of details left to finish up between the policy implementation manuals and the forms. So with that, I am going to hand it off to Jennifer Barshak, and she is going to get us started with some of the few updates we have for policy changes.
Okay, thanks, Katie. Just checking to make sure, are we recording? Yes, okay, great. And are you seeing the first page of the presentation?
Yes,
all right. Okay. So first of all, I just want to say hi to everybody and thank you so much for being here. And most of all, thank you for everything that you do every day to support our early care and education providers in their work. It's been a challenging few years, especially. And, you know, we recognize at DHS all of the things, big and small, that you do supporting providers and supporting yourselves, and just so grateful. Feels like really important work, and we're so glad to have you on board. So with that, I know Katie ran through our agenda today, and just thinking maybe we should take the time to do some quick introductions. I am Jennifer Barshak, and I am the Quality Rating and Improvement System Specialist over in the Child Development Services team at DHS. I've been in this role for 5.5 years, and I'm the lead for Parent Aware Policy and Implementation. I oversee the Parent Aware Raters contract, and I am the lead for the Parent Aware Racial Equity and other equity efforts that we have been diving into over these last few years in a very intentional way. And I can hand it off to Emily.
Thanks, Jennifer. I am Emily Seibel. I'm the Parent Aware Rating Team Manager. I'm over at the coordinating office for Child Care Aware. I have been a member of the rating team in some capacity for about 6 years now. And I have been the manager of the team for just over 2 years at this point. And I'll pass it on to Katie.
Hi, everyone. I guess I could have introduced myself at the beginning of the webinar, but I'm Katie Hoffman. I'm the Director of Quality Improvement at the Coordinating Office. I support the work of Melissa with all of you and the coaches, our recruiters, and then our accelerated and expedited pathway programs that Nikki Lepowski and Catherine Badinsky support. So happy to be here. This is probably well, I've been here for 8 years, so this is my 8th webinar with updates. So it's exciting. And I just want to reiterate what Jennifer said at the beginning. We're really grateful for all of you and all of the work that you do each day. So I'm going to pass it off to Kateri.
Hey everyone, thank you, Katie. My name is Kateri Skunis. I'm the PD Systems Lead Coordinator. My role with Parent Aware is to help support all of our PD advisors across the state. And the other side of my job is to help support our plan and support staff who schedule and deliver all of the training face-to-face throughout the state. So I've been with the coordinating office for 5, coming up on 6 years. Before that, I was a PDA and I did a little bit of everything PD related at the Northwest District office. So thank you for all joining us. And Christina, you can kick us off next.
Sure. I'm Christina Erstad-Zinke. I'm at the Center for Early Education and Development at the University of Minnesota. And I am here to talk about the class observations that our organization do for Parent Aware. And then I think I was last, but I might be wrong.
Thanks,
Jennifer.
Christina. Yeah,
Okay.
we don't have Melissa listed on here.
Right.
She is going to do some presentation around the forms. So Melissa, I know you're on here. Do you want to just introduce yourself to those of you who don't know you yet?
Sure. Start my video, mostly so you can see my plants. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Melissa Slatnicher, and I don't know what I'm introducing myself. I work at the coordinating office and I support Parent Aware implementation, working with primarily Parent Aware coaches and recruiters. So thanks for joining us today.
Okay, thanks everybody. And sorry, Melissa, I don't know how I left you off. We will get that fixed. So first, so some of you may be new. We do this annually. And I like to start out with a little Parent Aware overview with some sort of fast facts or numbers at a glance. These are numbers that you can find online yourself on Develop. And I put that at the bottom of the slide here where you can access that. So I like to look at these just to kind of give us a foundation of where we are. Noting that these numbers are as of December 31st, 2022, and we will have some March 31, 2023 numbers available online soon. So there are, as of the end of December, 2,886 rated programs. That's an increase of 47 programs from the last time I reported on these numbers in our last year's webinar, with 32% participation of eligible childcare and early education programs. And I think it's notable that there was really quite strong participation in Parent Aware through the COVID-19 pandemic. Some of those programs, as you may know, extended their ratings, but there were a whole lot of programs that continued to participate and earn ratings or re-ratings. On this slide, I actually put the two side by side. These are the programs by the star rating level. I see a little typo there. Okay, so the numbers on the, no, that's correct. As of March of 2022 and as of December 2022. And these are the programs by star rating level. And when you go to the website, you can see these are statewide numbers, but you can do this by geographic region. If you're interested, I encourage you to do that. And you can see there are now 2,098 programs that are holding a 4-star rating and 271 programs holding a 3-star rating. So calling out that the programs that are holding a 4-star rating have increased, and the programs that are holding a 3-star are, let's see, also increased. Yes, 271 from, no, decreased. That's what I was thinking. Decreased 271, and they were at 331. And I'd like to think that some of that is exactly what we wanted to happen, that some of those programs are moving from the 3-star into the 4-star because we added that 4-star grant. Some of you who have been with us for a while will recall that we had a lot of engagement around changing the grants from $2,500 across the star levels of 1, 2, and 3 to a tiered system with different grant levels, beginning at 1 star and going up through a 4-star. And part of the reason we did that is because we were not seeing programs going after that 4-star, even though we knew that they met all of the requirements for a 4-star. They wanted the grant. So we made that possible. And I believe that we're seeing that movement now. And I hope to do a more thorough presentation on that in the future. But that is pretty exciting to see that shift. Okay, and then the number of children enrolled in parent-aware rated programs, there are 55,708 children. That is up a little bit from 55,581 last time I reported, and 21% of the children enrolled are children with high needs. Okay, so any questions about any of that before we move into policies and implementation?
There's nothing in the chat, Jennifer. I think we're good.
Okay. Well, and at any time, feel free to pop any questions in the chat, and we'll either handle that at the end or as we're going along. Okay, so we have some parent-aware policies. There are some of these that really went into effect in January, and we notified you, but we hadn't done a webinar until now. And there's some that are going into effect in July. And we are in the process of completing the manual. We still need to do some final checks with licensing. We always have them review a portion of it, and MDE, make any final corrections, and we'll have that issued prior to July 1st, and hopefully quite a bit sooner than that. So first I want to go over some of these temporary COVID-19 policies. We have had these policies in place since April 27th of 2020. And each 6 months you may have seen, if you've been with us throughout, every 6 months we were updating them, revising them, extending them. And so we last made changes and notified childcare providers at the very end of 2022 about some that were expiring and some that were modified. The ones that are expired are these. We had a waiver in place that programs did not need to be actively serving children to maintain their parent-aware rating. That has expired. So programs must be actively serving children in order to be rated. There are no additional extensions for ratings. Programs with parent-aware ratings are required to re-rate on the 2-year cycle. Of course, they're eligible to re-rate sooner if they are going for a higher rating as well. The class observation waiver expired. Now we have a flexible modification with this. So there is an observation requirement for childcare centers with preschool classrooms that are seeking a 3 or 4-star rating. But there's a flexible modification, which I will talk about. And for accelerated pathway programs, the deadlines to submit a renewed accreditation certificate are no longer extended, and those must be submitted to maintain a parent-aware rating. So in effect, January 1st and through the end of December 2024, we have building quality and class coaching, professional development advising, and technical assistance services All can be offered virtually, and requirements to meet in person are waived. While I'm saying that's through December 31st, 2024, we have no expectation that that would end after that. We're just not ready to commit beyond that right now. So that is the policy in place through that time period. And then the class observation requirement for childcare centers with preschool classrooms seeking a 3 or 4 star rating in the full and expedited rating pathways is reinstated. But to provide flexibility and support for programs in this requirement transition, the scores from the class observations are not being used when calculating a program's rating. The purpose of requiring class observations is to support professional growth and continuous quality improvement. And we recognize that providers in the childcare aware system need time to transition back to parent aware requirements following the pandemic and the temporary policies. So in recognition of the time and the coaching that programs need, that is why we are making this modification that scores would not be included in the rating. Allowing coaches and programs to use those observation scores and feedback to assess current practices and opportunities for professional growth. So before we step into the next policy, it has come to my attention that some people don't really know what happens behind the scenes with those programs. And I'd like to have Emily and Christina share what happens on their end with these programs. So I'll hand it off to Emily first.
Thanks, Jennifer. So, pardon me. So when it comes to class observations, obviously these are only going to apply to those programs that are centers that serve preschoolers that are seeking a 3 and 4 star rating. And the way that this all gets put into motion is once a program has submitted their QDP, which is either online or through Develop, or if it's being sent over to us here at the office, we begin the process of getting it uploaded. The raters will begin reviewing. Once a program has gone into, if a program's QDP is reviewed and they have incomplete indicators, those incomplete feedback will be sent as normal. The program then would need to do their resubmissions, and then our team would prioritize those particular programs' resubmissions to make sure that we can quickly get them set up to have that class observation. And the way that that is done is in Develop, when a program that is eligible for a class observation does complete any resubmissions, any incomplete indicators, there's an automatic queue that the QDP will go into. So normally you would obviously see these submissions go into ready for rating, and that's where they stay until we do the final calculations. But for these programs that are eligible and need to complete the class observation, it's going to go into a queue that says awaiting class observation. That's going to be the Develop status. And that is then that triggers Christina sees that queue and her team. I'll let her take over with the next steps in that. And then once she goes over that, she can pass it back to me and I can tell you what we do going forward after the observation is completed.
Thanks, Emily. So when we start looking in the queue after the deadline for submission, we start going through and getting everything organized on our end. I will share, we were able to get some information today about programs that put things in their application about, close in May or things like that. But if you're not sure if that was a program you work with or not that listed that, feel free. I'll put after I push it back to Emily, I'll put the email address you can email to just double check with us. So any programs, particularly those that close in the month of May, if you can just double check with us, and I'll look if that's on that list or not, because then this week we're prioritizing scheduling. We're gonna after today, we're gonna prioritize scheduling the I think there's about 10 or 11 that are on that list that might not have been contacted yet, and go from there, but I'll put that in there. So then once they get contacted, it'll be first an email, and then we put in there, you can call or email us back. And then if we don't hear anything in a week, then we will give them a call and try that route. If we try to contact them by email and phone and don't have any response, then we'll reach out to the coaches that are listed. So in our view and to develop, we don't get to see everything that you all get to see for very good reason, because that might bias us or something on the observation. So what we see is whoever is assigned as the parent aware coach in develop, and sometimes the class coach is listed and sometimes it isn't. And so just be aware, we are just going off of what information develop is showing us. So then we might reach out to the coach and say, hey, we're trying to get a hold of this particular program. Here's the contact information we have from develop. And then you can give us a heads up. Yeah, maybe there's something going on, or maybe there's a different number, something like that, that might need to get updated with licensing. So then it gets updated and developed, those sort of things. Otherwise, if we get a hold of the program, we just say, hey, we're calling to schedule your class observation. We go through kind of that spiel that's in the getting ready for your class observation and what to expect documents that we also give them when we confirm the observation. But we say, here's the classroom that was selected randomly by develop to receive an observation. Here are the next up, because if we come that day and something is going on, right? I had one time a child got really, really sick, and like everything paused and parents needed to be called, and the classroom, it wasn't a normal day. So we talked with the director and we decided that it might be better to observe the second classroom that day. So just make sure that programs are aware that even though that's the one that was selected, there may be reasons that we have to go to the next one. Maybe someone's pregnant and they go into early labor, right? Like there's so many things that can happen. So sharing that with them, we talk about what a typical day is, and then we say we'd like to start the observation at the beginning of the day when the majority of kids have arrived. And we know that that varies. That could be 7:30 a.m. or that could be 11 a.m. or 3 p.m. or sometimes even 5 p.m. And so whenever that is, we'll aim to schedule that observation. We usually try and say in the next few weeks to get them thinking sooner than later about doing the observation. And then once we decide on a day and a time, we send a confirmation by email, and we do CC any coach that's listed in our view and develop. So you should start seeing those coming through into your email soon. And if you're not CC'd on any, or you hear that a program's having one, it might be that you're just not listed, and that might be something to reach out to see, what might be going on there. But I probably can't help you with that, but I'm happy to, share information about the date and the time and that sort of thing. So then, they get the confirmation. The observer will confirm that by email or a phone call a couple of days, 2 or 3 days beforehand. And then the observer will come, they will do the observation. Remember, we do 4 cycles. So a cycle is 20 minutes of observation and about 10 minutes of coding. And then after that cycle is done and coded, we do that 3 more times for a total of 4 cycles. Things to know, the class tool says that we can score if we have at least 10 minutes of data. So sometimes the observation might be a little shorter than 2 hours, because maybe at 15 minutes, they go into unstructured gross motor play, and therefore we're not doing the observation and we can score that because we had 15 minutes. So it might get done 5 minutes early. Or if they go into unstructured gross motor play and that's for 30 minutes, then we might be there for 2.5 hours because we pause the observation while they're outside. So we always say approximately 2 hours, but just to make it clear that that can vary just depending on how quickly we get started in the observation. If the teacher might have a couple questions after we introduce ourselves, we do say in there, we will, be happy to introduce ourselves, but if the educators are in the middle of whole group or something like that, we're obviously not going to make them stop their day or change anything about their day, and we'll try and do that between cycles or at the end of the observation if possible. The observation's done, the observer goes and enters the data right away into an iPad. And so the data gets into Develop right away. So if anything happens, that at least the data is secure and protected in Develop. And then they have the rest of that day to write their feedback report. And then they submit that to the Anchor. Every single class observation is reviewed for data entry, and the feedback report is reviewed as well. So then that review process happens. And then once the Anchor says, yes, the data is good, the feedback report is ready to go, they click a button in Develop, and then it disappears into a different dropdown, which would be like the completed observations in our queue, and it goes back to Emily's team.
Thanks, Christina. So then at the end, toward the end of the cohort, when we are doing our final calculations, which are all done by me, then any program that completed the class observation in non-temporary policy or flexible policy times, we would take the scores that show up on that final report and enter those into Develop to help with the calculations. However, with this new ongoing flexibility that we have following the temporary policies, it's going to be entered a little bit differently. We're still going to confirm that a program has completed their class observation because that is required for them to receive that 3 or 4 star rating. And then instead of entering the number of points that have been awarded based on that class observation for all programs that have completed that this cohort, and then going through the end of these temporary flexible policies, we're giving the full 15 points, which is the maximum number of points for a class observation. So if it's not completed, it's 0 points. If it is completed, it's the maximum 15 points, and it'll remain that way until the end of this temporary period. And then that just gets factored into the final calculations, and they get calculated as normal after that. Normally, we would also send that final report does get printed and mailed out with programs parent-aware certificates that they earn at the end of the cohort. So any additional information that's been entered into that report, all the information that was mentioned by Christina, that will be printed and sent with the packets as it used to be done before we entered temporary policy times.
And Emily, I was just going to add, I got a message in the chat just to me, and you all might be curious in the answer to this as well. The Develop randomly selects the classroom that's going to get the observation. And just so you know, we have this 1/3 to 1/2 thing going in Parent-Aware, which means if you have 1 classroom, you get 1 observation. If you have 2 classrooms, you get 1 observation. If you have 3 classrooms, you get 1 observation. And then when you get to 4, if you have 4 classrooms, it's going to be 2 observations. 5 classrooms, 2 observations. 6 classrooms, 2 observations. And then the second you get to 7, there'll be 3 observations So 3 classrooms that are, it's not the same classroom, it's 3 different. So if you had 7, some of the programs there's a few out there that have many, many preschool classrooms. And so we use this 1/3 to 1/2. Develop has it entered in there, and it knows as long as it's the classroom says it's preschool or preschool toddler, it will put this that classroom in the pool for a class observation and randomly select the ones needed for that. And so just so you know, every once in a while we'll call and we'll say, hey, I'm here to schedule in the super dog classroom. And they're like, oh, there's only toddlers in that room. And it'll say toddler preschool, but in reality, right, it's preschool just because some kids have to stay there a little longer before they can move up to the next one, but it's majority toddler. So then we would just say that there's a way in Develop, we can say we can't complete an observation in this classroom for this reason, and then Develop automatically moves to the next eligible classroom. So as your most programs are able to catch that, and they'll say that on the phone or an email. But when you see those confirmations come room, if you have concern about the classroom that was chosen, right, you'll see what classrooms are in the confirmation email. We say this classroom, this date, this time, this classroom, this date, this time. And so if you have any concerns, please let us know right away, because it might just be something that didn't get caught. We just have the list in Develop. So that's a really good question. And if at any time you forget that or you can't remember, I know it is in I think like a document that's publicly available, but don't hesitate to just send me an email or ask Ashley on the class OLC, like, remind me again, I have a program that has 10 classrooms. How many observations would they get? So great question.
There's 2 questions in the chat I'm seeing. Christina, I think they're both for you.
Emily
you see
handled
those?
extras. So that's, will the class scores be listed in the classroom tab? Because we don't get to see that view, but I can answer. Rochelle, we have started. And so there are, it's looking to be a very big cohort, which is way more than we expected, but we have started, and we hope to keep trucking along every day. But if you have any concerns, don't hesitate to send me an email.
Yeah, and I will say the process and the locations for all of the data is going to be the same as it has been in the past. We're just scoring these a little bit differently. So the reports will be where they have been in the past in those classrooms.
Okay, great. Any other questions coming to mind? So Melissa has said in the chat that the FAQ is on the CCA Google site, and Christina has listed her the email you can send a message to if you'd like to know, if you'd like to share information about a program ending early or have any questions about the observations. Okay, so we have one more question, I think.
I can take that one, Deja. That's a great question. Class coaching can continue through the end of the cohort. It just can't happen on the day of the observation. So if your observation happens on May 20th and you want to keep coaching them, or you get the results and you want to go back and talk through them and talk about where they can make some improvements or just kind of debrief those results with them, you can certainly do that up until the end of the cohort. Great question.
Okay. Hopefully you are seeing the new expedited pathway policy effective July 2023. Okay. So this is really the only new policy that we have beyond the ones that we've talked about with class. So this is just for the expedited pathway. This is to maintain a 3 or 4 star rating. Programs with preschool classrooms at the time of application must receive a class observation. And in addition, all lead teachers listed in the classroom tab at the time of the 6-month review must meet the 50 hours of training requirements for a 3 or 4 star rating. The change here is that it used to be that it was only those teachers that were in place when they first received the expedited rating. And we realized that we had a gap there, and we really needed it to be the teachers that are listed at the time of the 6-month review. And then when there is turnover between one lead teacher and 25% of the lead teachers since the initial rating date, submit evidence for at least 75% of lead teachers. And if evidence for at least 75% of the lead teachers cannot be verified, the rating will end 6 months after the issuance date and no rating will be issued. The program may choose to pursue a rating through the full rating pathway or the accelerated pathway once they earn an accreditation through an approved accrediting body. So this is this policy. There was no policy like this for the expedited pathway before. This is to have parity across the pathways, because this policy exists for full rating pathway programs and accelerated pathway programs. Yes. Okay. So that was those were just a couple of places where we realized we needed to make sure that we were doing our part to have the same kinds of requirements across those pathways. Anything else to say about that, Katie, or any questions? Okay, well, with that, we are going into implementation, and I will hand that back to your team, Katie.
Thank you, Jennifer. And thank you, Christina and Emily, for taking time to go over the class observation process. That was actually a really good refresher for myself as well. So I hope everybody found that beneficial. I am going to take us through what we have so far for implementation manual changes. Let's see if I can get this queued up right. So we just have a handful to present today. Again, there may be some additions that we'll make that you'll see on that final summary of changes document. But for today, I just have a few that I want to review with you. And then Kateri has a few for professional development advisors that she'll be presenting. So the first minor edit or update that you'll see in the implementation manual is our partners at CICC updated the language that they had under the section where we try to differentiate the services that are CICCs versus the services that are mental health consultants. And so Priscilla Weigel at CICC took the opportunity to just update their language about the way that they support programs, children, and families, and how that's different from how mental health consultants support programs. So you'll see those very minor language changes, but they just made a couple of additions and updates there. Kateri, I'm going to hand it to you to do section 3 for professional development advisors. And I just made bullet points here. So if there's any explanations you want to provide, otherwise you'll see those in the summary of changes as well.
Yeah, so a lot of these weren't actual changes necessarily. They were just clarifications to existing language. So the first one, as you know, on May 1st, Achieve is changing their certificate policy. So the previous language in the implementation manual talked about sending in all training certificates, credentials, diplomas, etc. to Achieve to appear on the learning record. So we just added an asterisk and made a note that is as of May 1st, 2023, Achieve will continue to accept and verify auto-approved certificates issued before May 1st within the 5-year look back of current acceptable documentation policy. So any training certificates that are sent in May 1st and afterwards will not be accepted by Achieve. If you have more questions around that, I would refer to both the announcements that Achieve has made themselves. They do have a nice one-pager on their website in the resources section, but we just wanted to put that clarification in the implementation manual. And again, with the foreign credential evaluation, Janet helped us kind of clarify some of the language on that process. So it was very minor details. We just updated the link that has some additional agencies that are allowed under that foreign credential evaluation scholarship. And then the last one we edited or clarified some language was around the individual membership statuses. So we've had some questions, clarifications, both from Emily and our team about the process for having a current membership at the time of the QDP. So that language has also been updated. So noting that the raters use the expiration date, not necessarily the status of the membership. And that's what we got for you.
Terry, any questions about those minor updates? Okay. First I go. So in the section 4, the parent aware quality coaches, we really made some very minor edits that weren't quite even worth noting, just in terms of, changing provider to program or educator or something like that. But what I did want to highlight is that we have decided and have agreed upon with DHS to maintain the rules for phone and email use as they have been throughout COVID. So we will still be allowing you to use up to 10 hours of the 20 to 30 hours in building quality for phone and email. All of the 3 to 15 hours in your full rating cohorts with programs. In your CQI or QIS cases, those can be unlimited phone and email. And then for class, because we're maintaining this 15 hours per preschool classroom policy, we're allowing up to 5 of those 15 hours per room to be phone or email. So we're sticking with what we've just had all along. So it's not really a change. I just wanted to highlight that we weren't going back to any pre-COVID practices based on knowing that some of the temporary policies had been allowed to expire. We were holding on to this one. Okay, any questions on that? Or other questions about implementation? Okay, I'm going to hand it to Melissa, who's just going to talk through a couple of the changes and forms that we'll be working on and finalizing for you, and hope to have ready in the next couple of weeks. So Melissa, I'm going to stop sharing because I don't really have anything else on the slide to share. So we'll just see your face.
All right, thanks, Katie. And yes, we don't have a slide because we wanted to wait until we had final copies so that we weren't giving any information out that wasn't accurate or any last minute changes. So the first thing that I do want to acknowledge is that this round of reviews, I had the chance to work with a group of quality coaches that committed their time to sharing thoughts and providing feedback about really how the work happens. And so what forms, what do they need as far as forms, as far as develop, just really how Parent Aware is implemented in their day-to-day with programs. And so I just wanted to thank that group. And so if you know the people in your region that contributed to that work, I didn't write out a list, but so I just want to thank that group for their time and commitment to that process. So I will highlight a couple of forms that we know have changes. So the QDP will have some changes, and I just need to grab my document here so that I can make sure that I note everything. So the first change that we included with coach feedback was that we did make an update to the indicator checklist. We know that it can be tricky to understand what T13B means, or A11. We maybe have those memorized, but programs don't necessarily. And so for each label, we added the indicator language. So that is a change that you will see in the QDP for this round. Let's see, for T13B, T23, and T24, we removed the details about the class scoring, and we added a note in the glossary that references the temporary or the modified policies that are in place. And so, that will hopefully help support your conversations when you're explaining how class is happening through the July 2024 cohort. Sorry, I've lost my view here of you guys. Let's see, so the next change that I want to point out in the QDP is that this is kind of a big one. So for R11, this is the indicator that we ask for that two-way conversation. And so part of that, previously, we required a signature from a family member. And so that is no longer a requirement for this indicator for the evidence. So the change is that now the evidence will be that a program should submit an example of that communication that includes at least two of the topics, and they will include a written description of how that example is used to show the intentional conversations that happen with families. So that's a pretty significant change, probably the biggest the biggest change, I'll say, in like what we're asking for. So with that said, I see a hand raised. You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Does that mean that it does not need to be completed? So you could have a blank form saying this is when we fill it out?
Yes, that is correct. Emily, can you chime in to confirm that? That was my takeaway. You can unmute yourself.
Thank you. Well,
Yeah.
we probably need to follow up on that question.
Okay.
The intention was still to have evidence that has been completed within the 12 months immediately preceding the QDP due date. So we will follow up with more specifics about what we've seen in the past versus what we're going to be looking for in the future.
So I'm sorry if I preemptively shared incorrectly, but yes. So in the past, we also had, if no new families have enrolled, then you could submit a blank form. So we understand there's going to be situations. So hopefully this will allow for more flexibility in what's actually happening in the programs, and then they can use the written description to explain how they have the conversations and in what manner is this happening. So
yeah, we want to make sure that we are stressing that even though the majority of the evidence that we see for this indicator is enrollment forms, this is not the only type of evidence that we accept for this. And so we want to see some type of evidence that has been used in the last 12 months preceding that QDP due date. It doesn't have to be an enrollment form, but that's why we're going to be asking for that written description. But we'll have more to come.
thanks, Emily. All right. So wanting you to know that that is a change that you will see in the QDP. So thinking about what that means. If you have questions or specific questions that come up for you, please ask. Please send them to Quality Improvement, and we meet and we can talk about them so that we are sure that we're kind of thinking about this in full before we provide that follow-up. Okay, so the last thing I want to say about the QDP is just, we did provide some clarification about R12, about the language access line. And so if you're unsure about what that means for your programs, please reach out with any questions. But we just wanted to just reiterate that moving forward in the July 2023 cohort, that will not be accepted as evidence for R12. All right. Let me go back here. Make sure I get any questions. Training. There's a training question. Kateri, do you want to answer that now or should we wait? It's up to you.
We can answer it now. This might be more on Emily's realm since it has to do with the rating process and talking about training. I know clarification came out in the coach update last week as well, but Emily, if you just want to confirm Mary Ann's question.
Yeah, so let me just take a look here. We continue to check the learning record for trainings that have been completed throughout the end of the cohort.
Still need to be, so if they do not show up, they still need to be completed by the QDP due date.
Right. The issue that we
example-
were running into was, I'm sorry, the issue we were running into that we wanted to make sure we were covering is that we don't want programs to be penalized for any delays that might be happening on Achieve's end in getting those onto the learning record, because we do know that there have been times in the past where trainings have been completed by the appropriate deadline and they're just not appearing on the learning record yet. So we will continue to check those throughout the cohort, but we are still checking for that appropriate time frame. Thanks, Kateri. And thank you, Mary Ann.
All right. Okay. It's back to me. All right. So the other, oh, I already talked about that. Sorry. Thinking about the glossary. So those are the primary changes in the QDP that were referenced. Other changes you might notice are, there were some edits throughout. We talked about, we added language about the 12-month, kind of the evidence needs to be within that 12 months. We just are confirming that in the QDP. We did a little bit of reorganization, and then it has been reformatted for accessibility. So you will notice that it looks different than it has in the past. So visually, it has a different look to it. And so it's been updated that way by our Marcom team, and they will take it from this point and then refine it. So we are looking forward to that. All right. Any other questions about the QDP? Waiting. 3, 2, 1. You're done. No more questions. Okay, just kidding. I won't take too much more of our time here because again, we'll get the summary of changes that we will list the form and what has changed so that you can reference it. But I did want to say that we were given the green light to update the goals in the paper ESA, which has long been something that we identified. They don't align with what the criteria are for parent aware in the full rating pathway. And since that's primarily who uses the ESA, we are happy to update those to match up with what we are asking for in the QDP. So you'll see those updated. Nothing else in the ESA is changing. Let's see, other documents that change regularly, like the change of participation form. That again has been updated with current dates, and acknowledging the scholarship policy will be changing back, or well, I'll be changing back the scholarship policy change. So that's referenced again as programs prepare for that. Other documents, sorry, just want to make sure I'm not missing anything in my notes. Oh, the coaching agreement. A change that we added to the coaching agreement is that we wanted to acknowledge that as the coach, you often get all the questions. And so we wanted to put language in both the program and the coach side that says the PDA is your primary contact for questions about the professionalism indicators as well as training. So that kind of supports that relationship. And then you can say, well, look, you can go here, and they can give you that that accurate information. So we added that. We also added a spot for programs to indicate their, method of communication that they prefer. So that will help kind of keep that in one place for you. Let's see. Other than that, Christina referenced the class FAQ, and we've made a few updates there, including references to the modified policies. So that's all accurate. And that's all I have. Other forms that have changes will come out and we'll list them, but again, we'll let those go through the full review cycle before we present them to you. Right.
Thank you, Melissa. And thank you all that supported that conversation around improvements and updates to how things are happening out in the field. I appreciate you all collaborating, and Melissa, I appreciate you leading that work. There's a question.
Yeah,
Yep, go ahead.
thank you.
Yeah, there's a question in the chat from Marianne. Great question. Is anything being added to the participation agreement reflecting our recent racism issues? Jennifer, I'm going to leave that one for you if you want to say anything about where we're at with that.
Yeah, I was wanting to provide a couple more parent aware updates, and so this ties in with that. So I'm going to put in the chat, first of all, this link to the website where we are sharing information about addressing racial inequities in Parent Aware. And hopefully you've all seen this many times already. So this is where you're providing updates, and actually I might as well let me just share my screen for a sec here too. Make sure I share the right one. Okay, are you seeing the Parent Aware website on the screen? Okay, so so this link that I put in the chat, this page is where we're keeping some information about how we've been working to address racial inequities, as well as other types of barriers to participation in Parent Aware. These links here link to the Parent Aware Racial Equity Action Plan, which was completed a little more than a year ago, and the childcare provider engagement work that we had done also close to a year and a half ago now, and the equity report that went to the Minnesota legislature in March of 22, which sort of ties in both of those efforts. And then hopefully you have been hearing that we have brought in some contractors to work with us on implementing these initiatives. And we put out a survey to help us prioritize which projects would receive some supported implementation with us for this calendar year. And one of those projects that was selected was the Racial Bias and Discrimination Incident Guidelines. This particular one has two buckets of work, and one is more internal, tied to the work of the Child Care Aware system, and Eric Hauge is leading on that. And there is language requirements that will be in the contracts with the regional agencies that deliver the services. And that is where the focus has been right now to date, and will be in the first part of this calendar year. And then in the latter part of this calendar year, we will start turning our attention to external ways to address racial bias and discrimination like that is happening with the programs that are participating in Parent Aware. So we are not in a place yet to add anything to the participation agreement. We will want to do some engagements around that. Some work group working on that with us. So stay tuned for more information about that specifically. And I want to encourage you to subscribe to the Parent Aware Racial Equity email list so that as we're updating this, but also just trying to keep everyone informed, that you directly receive those emails. We also do send out information to the Child Care Aware system as a whole, but that's a way for you directly to get the email rather than it maybe going through a district or regional coordinator to you. So the other announcement I'd like to make is related to this, and that is the development of the Parent Aware Advisory Committee. We have been working with a contractor, Rainbow Research, to build out plans for creating a new Parent Aware Advisory Committee that includes in its makeup some early care and education providers of different types, licensed programs, both child care centers and family child care, Head Start, and schools pre-K, as well as some parents and guardians who have young children in Parent Aware rated programs. The Parent Aware Advisory Committee will include some other committee members as well, and members from the Child Care Aware system. And just yesterday, we started promoting the opportunity for child care providers and parents to apply. So Diane Benjamin is going to be sending out an announcement to all of the rated programs. We also have the announcement going out to the MDE programs. It went out to the coordinators yesterday. So I'm sort of hoping you've been seeing this. It's, we're doing things differently and stepping into that work. I'm sure there will be mistakes made along the way, but we are really trying to bring in parents and providers in a way that we haven't before. And along those lines, we have flyers in English, Spanish, Hmong, and Somali. We will have meetings beginning later this year. There will be an orientation, and there will be 3 meetings later this year. They'll be 90 minutes. They'll be held in either the evening or on a Saturday morning, depending upon what the group wants. There's application forms, and we'll be really trying to get a good mix of people across the state with geographic diversity and some, BIPOC representation, and just maybe languages, and trying to figure out how we might be able to simultaneously translate meetings or support, support people who don't speak English as their primary language. So it's a learning experience for all of us. And anyway, if you hear from your programs that you're working with, any questions about that, I hope you'll feel equipped to be able to, help them know this is a great opportunity. We're paying them $25 an hour. We expect 8 to 10 hours of work that would happen both with the meetings and maybe some other materials they would review, or they may end up doing some other focus groups or things like that. So It's, taking shape, and it will continue to take shape as we move through it. The applications are due on April 30th, and we have an optional information session happening on the 27th. So feel free to reach out to me if you want more information about that. If you have questions, please try to help us promote it. And any questions about that or about anything else related to our Parent Aware equity work or otherwise?
Amanda, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question that I think is kind of on the minds of other people that have been mentioned. So in the realm of group equity work on DHS's part, is there conversation about like consequences for programs that are participating in Parent Aware or not? Mainly, I suppose, mainly in participating in Parent Aware that do wind up having some kind of a racial discrimination situation happen in their program, or some kind of like, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, like resolution or way to resolve the situation. I don't know if consequence is the right word, but is that part of the conversation in those equity groups and that kind of thing?
Yeah, it will be when we step into that work. Absolutely. We heard that loud and clear at the open forum, that was what many people wanted to see. And so we will have the support again of a contractor that we're working with. That they're called Portage Partners Consulting. It's a different contractor than the one that we're working on with the advisory committee. And Portage Partners is working with us on these 5 different projects. And yeah, this work to have conversations about what do we think should happen in those cases, we'll have in the latter half of 2023. And I don't, I think our goal is to have some recommendations by the end of this calendar year. They would not go into effect this calendar year, but our intent is to have those conversations. Let's get some recommendations developed, have the Parent Aware Advisory Committee also weigh in on different recommendations. And that will be really interesting because we're going to have childcare providers and parents at those meetings along with others. And there'll be other ways we'll want to get information too, maybe some kind of surveys and things, but we will step into that work and be asking for more input from all of you. I don't know, Katie, should we also call out what's happening in June?
Sure, we can. I see a hand up first, so let's go to Sherida.
Let's do that.
Sherida, what's your question?
Yeah, I just kind of had a question related to Amanda's. So like, since there hasn't been anything developed of what to do when we encounter rated programs, kind of having blatant racist kind of reasoning practices, that kind of stuff, what is like the Parent Aware equity recommendation to do in the interim until you get something long-term put in?
In the interim, I would suggest you bring it immediately to your supervisor. And it should be brought to our attention, and that would be Eric. But we are well aware that you need protocols, but like any kind of event that would occur that is unacceptable, you bring it to your supervisor.
Great questions. Thank you all for sharing those. Jennifer, yeah, I can speak a little bit about the event that we're going to have on June 1st. This was originally going to be our Quality Coach Community of Practice, but we decided to capitalize on an opportunity to use some funding that the coordinating office received specifically for the Parent Aware Racial Equity Action Plan work, and trying to take some of it off of my plate and maybe Emily's plate specifically, as we were kind of leading the strategic plan work around that. And we are also contracting with Portage Partners Consultants to come and help us facilitate this event on June 1st. So we've expanded this invitation in June. We're going to meet at the golf course in St. Cloud, so popovers for everybody, just because we're happy, as am I. And the intent of the day is really going to be a couple of different things. We met yesterday and have started kind of mapping out the agenda. So we're going to do some overview of like the entire Parent Aware Racial Equity plan and projects that are happening right now. And then we're going to zoom in and we're going to focus on specifically the rating pathways and cohorts. So we've gotten a lot of feedback from you guys as a system, from participants that say, we need more flexibility, we need different pathways, alternate pathways. Family childcare is looking for more considerations of the way that they operate their business and they operate childcare. And so we really want to dig in with this group and revisit the concept that we had started talking about. I think it was 5 years ago. Teresa Collins, if you're on here, maybe you can help me remember any of my other coach champions who were with me at the time when we threw out this concept of rolling cohort. So, thinking about more flexible application dates, more flexible submission dates, that kind of thing, so that if a program comes in and they're ready, they can be ready and they can earn a rating sooner than 6 months or 12 months or whatever it might be. So the day is really intended for us to be kind of digging into that, generating some ideas, and Portage Partners Consultants are going to come and help facilitate that conversation. So I knew that I could probably bring you all together and have that conversation and have you generate some ideas. But what I would be able to do with it would be pretty limited. So we have signed on with this group. They are amazing. They are organized. They have been with us through this planning process. So they know about Parent Aware. They know about the challenges. They did a crosswalk of the Racial Equity Action Plan and the Equity Engagement Report, and kind of found all the common themes and have really been walking with us side by side through this whole process. So I'm really excited for you to meet them. I'm excited for them to come and hear from you. So that day will be really specific to, let's talk about the current pathways that we have. Let's talk about the cohort structure. Let's talk about how coaching works, how advising works, and what are the ideas that we can come up with that we could start formalizing and thinking about putting into recommendations. They might not be recommendations that will go into effect anytime soon, but this is our initial meeting. This isn't going to be the only time we're going to talk about rating pathways and cohorts. Like I said, we are just capitalizing on an already planned event. And Jennifer allowed me to kind of crash her project and say, let's use this as an engagement opportunity and start talking about what we really want to see as improvements and upgrades to the way that we engage participants and the way that we support them and what they need. So that's the plan for that day. I see the note in the chat. Will it be recorded and distributed? Unfortunately, no. We are holding this as strictly an in-person. I considered bringing the owl and was going to try to figure out how to do that, but I feel like it won't work as well as I would want it to. So this one is not going to be recorded, but please know that Portage Partners is so good at taking notes and so good at synthesizing that the product that you're going to get after the event is going to give you all the information that we talk about. I have full confidence that you are going to get everything that we talk about in lots of detail, and we'll share it all out when we're done. So thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, and if you are unable to attend, we are going to do some surveys, I think before and after, where we're going to do some kind of needs assessment at the beginning or understanding assessments at the beginning. And then at the end, what did we miss? What do you want to follow up on? So those that aren't able to attend, we'll make sure you guys get that survey too, so you can share with us. So Marianne, your question, can we not have any guidance in place before more than a year after issues were shared with our system?
We have heard that before, and we will get some guidance back to you. I don't have it in this minute. Other than to definitely bring anything to your supervisor.
Okay. Anything else presenters want to note or share in terms of policy implementation or forms? And any other questions or needs that you all have in this moment?
Can I unmute to add one thing I had it in my notes and I missed it. So for those of you who are wondering, paper forms are not the only way that we work with programs. So Jennifer has been working with us on the forms. So she partners really closely with us, and we have a plan to work through the develop system together to kind of ensure that those things that we change in one place get changed in the other, and to kind of do a side by side together. So I just wanted to confirm that would be happening. So there may be changes that you see and develop as well. Not big changes, sorry, that was not the right thing to say, but as it relates to kind of our QDP and that work, I just wanted to confirm that we will be doing that as well.
Thanks, Melissa. Cherie, I see your hand. Go ahead.
I guess I just have a question. Doreen had brought it up to me and I hadn't been in there in a while, but in Eager to Learn, how we used to have the coaches like community, it's gone. So where is all that information?
The group coaching platform, the group
Okay,
coaching.
so it's gonna be in there. Okay, all right, I hadn't looked in there and I was like, I guess I don't know where it went. And then now that makes sense. Okay, sounds good.
Thanks, Cherie. Astor, I see your question about timeline about new forms. We're very close to having the finalized QDP. So I don't want to give a date, but within the next few weeks that will be ready. So you can be ready to use that in July. The rest of the forms, like Jennifer said, we're still working with licensing and some other partners in the policy arena that could inform some of the changes in the forms that we have. So we just want to make sure we have all of those completed and final before we make everything else final. But as in years past, we will try to get everything posted to a July 2023 implementation folder in the Google shared site. Melissa's going to lead that, as she always does so seamlessly. So we'll get everything uploaded there, well before the start of the cohort if we can. So we'll keep you posted on as things are added to that folder and ready to go.